Hello everyone. Welcome to Public Health Insights live Q&A, where we'll be answering your questions, providing you tips for finding practicum placements or internships, and ultimately all the information you need to choose a practicum program for your public health and global health journey. My name is Gordon, your host for this live Q&A, and I'm joined by Lashawn, Bindra, and Purva.
Right. I'm glad to have you all here. And if you haven't already heard, we do have this awesome podcast called the Public Health Insight Podcast. And it's really a great resource to cover all things public health. And we talk about things like the sustainable development goals. We talk about social determinants of health. We touch on so many different topics in public health and global health. And we also talk about career development stuff. So if you're looking for that edge to take your career to the next level, or if you're a student looking to get that edge in terms of applying to different practicums, that's the place to go to. So I'm just going to drop a couple links here in case you all want to subscribe. And I also want to mention, and I'm getting a call request here, hold on. I also want to mention that everyone should stay tuned till the very end because we're doing one special giveaway for a lucky someone. So stay tuned till the very end.
So for today's live Q&A, we're going to be covering a variety of topics with all of you. And these are going to include how important is a practicum or internship experience, tips for applying to practicum placements, how you can narrow down your options when you're applying to practicums, and lastly, choosing a practicum that is right for you.
I also want to point out that this is meant to be an interactive experience. So we encourage you to put your name into the chat box, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, country, region, where you're joining us from. And throughout the session, please feel free to insert your questions into the chat box. We're going to try and get to as many as we can. So please don't hesitate to do that.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Purva. So yes, allow us to introduce ourselves in a little bit more detail. My name is Gordon Thane. I did my undergrad at Western University, where I got a bachelor's of medical science in microbiology and immunology in 2014. I later went back to Western University to pursue my MPH, which I received in 2019, and I completed my practicum at the National Collaborating Center for Infectious Diseases in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and currently I'm working as a program coordinator for the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit.
Awesome. And I'll go next. So my name is Lashawn Benedict, and I'm so happy to see so many people from all around the world in this chat. So thank you for joining us. I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Toronto, focusing on biology and biochemistry. I then did a master's in public health at Western and a master's in global health management at McMaster University. I currently work as a community manager for a global health community of practice in Ottawa. So thank you for joining us. I'll hand it over to Bindra.
Hi everyone, my name is Bindra. I completed my undergraduate degree at Western University, where I did medical sciences and specialized in physiology. And then I went on to do my master's in public health at McMaster University. So in terms of my practicum placements, I actually completed two. My first one was at the Region of Waterloo Public Health, and then I did my second one at Sick Kids Hospital. And so those kind of opened up a lot of doors for me. And so currently I'm working at Ontario Health as a specialist within the area of health system improvement and population health management.
Okay, that leaves off me. My name's Purva Mehta. I did my undergrad degree at Western University as well. I did the Bachelor's in Medical Science program, where I specialized in interdisciplinary medical sciences. I then went on to do my master's degree at McMaster University in global health, and I specialized in health equity and globalization. I did my practicum at the Humanitarian Health Ethics Research Group, and I currently work as a planning and operations coordinator at the Ted Rogers Center for Heart Research here in Toronto.
All right, perfect. And Bindra, I noticed that someone's at your alumni for your McMaster MPH program, so shout out to them as well.
Oh, that's so great.
So before we go any further, I just wanted to point out that, like we said, we want this to be a very interactive experience, and I think part of that interaction that's going to come with it is connecting with each other. So I'm going to drop 4 links in the chat box right now, and it's links to our LinkedIn pages that you could connect with each of us here today. So I encourage you all to connect with us and connect with each other by, introducing yourself, and drop your LinkedIn in the chat box and connect with each other, because we're all in it together.
All right, thanks, LaShawn. So keep in mind as we go through this live Q&A, we're mostly focused on practicum placements in Canada, and these tips that we're sharing can be applied more broadly to other countries. I know LaShawn even has experience doing a practicum in a different country too, so he can provide some insights into that. Now for the fun part. So we received a lot of questions upon registration. So thank you for submitting those questions, and we'll do our best to get through as many of them as possible. Now, where we're going to start is a lot of people wanted to know about what are some of those most important factors to consider when deciding to choose a practicum. Very valid question. There's probably no right or wrong answer. It might look a little bit different for different people. So the first question along those lines is, and I'll throw it over to LaShawn first, is how do you identify your area of interest?
Yeah, this is a very important question that I get all the time. People are wondering what they are interested in. And I think that it's really a tough question to answer, because it really depends on, your kind of upbringing and your career trajectory into public health or global health. So a great place to start off is, what things have you liked in the past? Are you currently volunteering in specific positions? Are you working on the side and focusing on a specific area in global health? So those are kind of specific areas that you could glean from to get that insight. But I also want to point out, and this is the route that I took too, is that just because you're comfortable with a specific area and you have a lot of, experience, and you really like that area that you're working in right now, there's still a lot of value into exploring areas that you don't know anything about. And that's the route that I took when I was doing my Western MPH Masters. I did a practicum in Thailand focusing on the double burden of nutrition or malnutrition among Thai children under the age of 5. So definitely outside the realm of what I thought I would be doing going into the MPH, but I kind of kept an open mind, and I wanted to, try different things that I was unfamiliar with.
How about you, Bindra? How do you find your niche?
I think just to add on top of what LaShawn already said, it's good to also pick things that are within your interests, but it's completely okay to pick things that you might not even be interested in. So say you end up picking a practicum and you don't like it. I think that's very useful, because then you know what you don't like. And then you can figure out that, okay, this is not the route I want to take. I want to explore something else. So even if currently you're a student and you don't know, you're picking between different things to do and you don't know what exactly you want to go into, you might end up figuring that out after you do your practicum, and you might completely hate your practicum experience and realize that I want to do something completely differently. I think that's completely okay, because the whole point of a practicum is that it's meant to be a learning experience. And so either way, if you don't end up liking the content area, you're still going to gain a lot of skills out of it. And so really focus on, in addition to just one of the factors being whether or not you like the area of interest, also focus on what kind of skills do you want to develop. And those skills will be really valuable in terms of making you more employable for after your practicum as well.
How about you, Purva? What's your thoughts on this whole interest thing?
Yeah, what I did is I looked back at the courses that I thought were really interesting to me during my undergrad. So I had taken a course that looked at the social determinants of health, and it really, really made me interested in it. And it was something that I had not learned throughout undergrad. So I knew that going into my master's, that was an area that I wanted to make sure I was focusing on. So I already knew I had an interest in it, or at least it was something I wanted to learn more about. And so there was a natural, eagerness to learn everything I could, which is always so helpful when you're going into a practicum. So you're stepping into a new area, but you're also going in with, a learner's perspective where you're going to be open to learning new things. And you're just going to, that you already like it because you've had a slight introduction to it already. I will also say that, throughout your master's or your program, whatever you're in, you will have the chance to explore a lot of different topics. The professors will give you a whole bunch of varying articles to read. You'll be talking about topics in health or whatever that will be so different from one another, and you will find that you will be naturally inclined to learning something more easily than, something else. So for example, I did not go into the business management stream that LaShawn did. I went into the health equity one because for me, I naturally gravitated towards it. So I knew that a practicum in that would come to me naturally and I would excel in it because it was something I was interested in. So those are just some things to think about as well.
Mm-hmm. And when they talk about not liking something, it doesn't mean that the whole experience goes in the garbage. So if you went and did, for example, I wanted to learn, not me for just an example, if you wanted to learn more epidemiology, biostatistics on the job, you might go for a data analyst job. You might hate it. Mm-hmm. But the takeaways are those transferable skills that you can apply to a health promoter position, policy analyst position. So even if you get less than ideal experiences, there's still those transferable skills that you can get. So it's your job to maximize essentially whatever practicum you get and leverage it into something that you actually want. And another point I wanted to make about interests, you could look at interest in terms of topic area, so whether child and maternal health, mm-hmm. or interest in terms of developing skills. So let me ask the three of you about that skills component, because we did get a question on skills. So mm-hmm. going into a practicum, what is sort of your mindset in terms of the skills that you want to develop for your career? And I'll start again with Purva.
For me, I knew that I wanted to go into, I had, two ideas that I was focused on. Either was project management, where I was looking at different research projects or, various programs within an organization, or policy development. Those were the two that I was interested in when I was doing my master's. But I also knew that I wanted to be working at an NGO or a, nonprofit. So that really helped me narrow down the places that I was looking to, or the organizations I was specifically focusing on. So I was not really looking at, Government of Canada applications or postings that were being put out, because that's not what I wanted to be working in. So having that, focusing down on, the type of organization you want to be building skills in, so you can create those connections that you'd want, but also what type of skills you can easily bring in. I have a good, people skills, something comes easy to me. So project management was something I knew I'd be good at, and I wanted to be able to take that into the workforce after graduating as well. So thinking about the type of job you'd want to be doing ideally after graduating, and kind of working backwards and thinking about what type of skills you need to develop in order to get that job is a really good way to think about the practicum and approaching the type of roles you want to be getting.
Awesome. And Bindra, I'll toss it to you in a different perspective. So one of the questions we had too is, what is more important to prioritize when choosing a practicum placement or an opportunity? Is it the skills that you want to develop or the reputation of the organization?
That's a really good question. I think this was something I struggled with as well while I was trying to pick out which practicum I wanted to pick. And something that I really focused on was the skills I wanted to develop. I think that was my main priority, because I realized that I could transfer those skills in any other jobs I wanted to do. But I also kept in the back of my mind that the organization is important, because while you're at that job, you want to make sure that you're developing those connections along the way and really thinking about that end route of where you want to end up. Mm-hmm. So for me, I actually lucked out because I kept that organization aspect in mind, and along to the skill aspect, I was able to get a contract even after my practicum, because of this connections that I developed throughout my practicum experience, and really networked throughout my experience, in addition to just developing those skills. So I think it's important to keep in mind what your end goal is, and that will really help you carve out your path in terms of when you're doing your practicum, whether you want to focus on just the skills or whether you see yourself working at that organization afterwards. Then maybe you really want to focus on the reputation of the organization piece and see if you're going to be able to make those connections there to help you develop your career even after the practicum. So I think it really depends on what your end goal ultimately might be.
Mm-hmm. And LaShawn, Bindra kind of talked about end goal there. So how can a practicum help shape your end goal?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And before I get there, I want to just kind of touch on a couple of things that everyone else has mentioned here. So I think everyone in this room is trying to, maybe they're at a different stage of their practicum journey right now. And I know that a lot of them, especially those at Western MPH, are kind of having to decide tomorrow. So they're going through a list of different practicums and figuring out what is right for them. So touching on some of these main themes that we've been discussing, the job specific, description and responsibilities. Look through those different descriptions and find specific skills that you think can help you with that end goal, like Gordon just asked me. Is there a specific qualitative research skill that you're looking for? Is there a specific quantitative research skill that you're looking for? Try putting yourself in those positions. Now, you're also balancing that with different other dimensions of picking a practicum, like, like Bindra mentioned, looking at your organization, the reputation within that organization. Is there room for mentorship and opportunities for growth? So those are kind of things you want to look at as well. And then things you could just cross off your list right away. Your geographic location. Does it require you to go to Narnia, wherever Narnia is? Like, you could cross that off the list if you're not trying to go to Narnia, right? And remote or not remote, that might be a deciding factor. Use that as a filter to get through these jobs. Paid or not paid. Do you have the means to, do an unpaid practicum? Or does it have to be paid? So that's another filter you can apply. And then there are other expenses that will be incurred, like travel, living accommodations, etc. So if it's not a reality within your given situation, that's something to consider. And the final kind of aspect to that is, what are your friends, your family, your colleagues, and other people who are working at that current organization saying about the organization? Is it a great environment, or is it kind of meh? So those are just kind of other factors. And I think all of them come together, but I think, like Gordon mentioned, that end goal of where you want to take your career, always break it down to things you can extract from that practicum. And it could be those soft skills, communication, leadership, teamwork, or it could be more technical skills like marketing, project management, or data analysis. So just make sure that you're kind of targeting those different skills and considering your end goal at the same time.
Precisely. And just as an example, I'll give you an example with my life story. So I was married. I was more of a mature student in my cohort. I needed a job immediately, right away. I didn't have any time to waste and explore. So one thing I did in my MPH is to talk to people, network with them. And one thing I found out, what's the most common job for an entry level for an MPH grad? And then someone I spoke to at a health unit who's in a senior management position told me health promoters. So basically, I tailored my practicum experience to get health promotion skills, which ultimately got me the job that I now have. So if your goal is to, people have different goals, whether it's interests, whether some people need to put food on the table, if you need to get kind of employment right away and then figure it out as you go. The key thing here is to find out what is your ideal situation. If it's a certain job, you make sure you network to find out what's required and then tailor your practicum experience to that. So that leads nicely into our next section here, which is around how to find a practicum placement. And we've got a lot of questions around what are some of those best practices you can use to secure a co-op, internship, or practicum placement that's aligned with those interests that we just spoke about. So I'm going to toss it over to Bindra first to get us started. So first of all, when's the best time to apply? And even what are those best practices to do that? Application and searching.
For sure. So I think in terms of the best time to apply, this goes for any application you kind of do. Try to do it as early as you can. I think for me personally, when I was applying to summer practicums, I started like in the beginning of the year in January, trying to keep a lookout for any postings that were coming up. And most of these postings for practicums in the summer, I would get directly through my school. So really make sure to ask someone within your department. I'm sure there's already postings coming to you in terms of students that they're hiring for practicums coming up. So keep a lookout for those and make sure that you're getting access to those right away. Something I also did personally was apply externally outside of just the internal postings that we were given as a student. And how I did this was I went about it in two different ways. So one, I kind of like set up informational interviews with organizations or companies that I was really interested in. And I would find these people through like previous networking that I did on LinkedIn, just randomly cold call certain individuals that I thought that I could potentially see myself working at. And that really helped for me to just get a feel of what kind of jobs are out there, what kind of people I could be working with, and just really explore the opportunities that are out there that I may not be given through my internally through my school experience. So I think that's something really important to do. And another thing I also did was I would go on different organizations' job feeds that they usually have. And I did something, I don't know if many of you know this, but there's this app called an RSS feed, or you're able to basically set up notifications that you can get whenever a job is posting on any website. You can basically get a notification pop up on your phone directly to the organizations that you're really interested in. And so I did that for all the different kind of public health units because that's where I was really interested in. And anytime they would post the job posting for like a practicum student or anything like that, I would directly get it popped up on my phone, so I don't have to manually go and check every time. And that really helped in terms of staying up to date with like all the postings that are coming up. So those are some of the strategies that I used.
Awesome. So that's great. And you find the job or the practicum placement that you're interested in, and people are kind of get a little cold feet in terms of reaching out to people, or organizations. So LaShawn, can you talk us through, what are some of those methods that we can use to reach out to organizations or people who might be able to give us more information about the practicum or to ultimately give us a practicum?
Yeah, I think to even start off that conversation, the most important thing is you don't want to go in to any of these interactions or these requests without being informed about what you're getting in, right? So I'm not going to go to, a research assistant position talking about malaria, bed nets, and not know anything about it, right? You want to have some sort of backing in what you're trying to approach here. So do your research, read different papers in the literature. You could go on the WHO website or just learn more about it. Everyone here, I'm assuming, has had some experience going through some sort of literature at some point. So use that to your advantage. You're an expert in delving through this information, so use that. I want to point out, because this is a question I get a lot too, and it's kind of related, is we're talking about ways to find a practicum. And, oftentimes people say LinkedIn, which is super valuable. And I could do a whole nother talk on how valuable LinkedIn is, but I'll spare you all that. But for example, when I was applying to my practicum placement, I actually got offered 2 different positions at WHO and PAHO. And I didn't end up accepting it because of the pandemic. It caused a lot of issues with being able to go there physically. But a lot of you might be wondering, how do you get these types of positions? Without using LinkedIn, right? And how do you even find that contact information? Well, I'll tell you the secret. One of the things that I use is basically going on the website. Sounds obvious, but a lot of people don't do it. Go find the topic you like, whether it's, heart disease, strokes, heat strokes, like whatever your specific topic is. WHO probably has a topic area and a website space dedicated to that. Now, the step people fail to take, I find, is go into their documentation, okay? They usually have some sort of report for 2021 or 2020, and they have a report with, the findings to date about that specific public health or global health issue. Now, once you click into that booklet and you scroll down, there's actually contact information from people at WHO. And sorry, WHO, if you get a lot of, emails right now, but they have contact information directly to some subject matter expertise related to the projects going on at WHO. What I did was literally read those documents, white papers that are on the website. I was informed about it, and then I reached out. I curated a nice and detailed email directly at this person's contact information that I found, and, I got an email back, right? For all the times I tried, I got an email back. So no one really utilizes that way of going super in detail and finding this random contact information. But what you'll find is that for a majority of public health and global health organizations, they have some sort of white paper, they have some sort of documentation, and they have some sort of contact person. And who better to contact, right? You don't want to go through HR because they might not know the specifics of any given research project or whatever placement's going on. You want to get to the source. And I find that's highly effective. Once again, sorry, WHO.
Sorry, not sorry. So I was lucky in that when I was doing my practicum, there wasn't this whole COVID thing and online practicum placements. But I know, Purva, you experienced a bit of that. So do you have any tips and stuff you could share?
Oh boy. So it was a bit of struggle because I had a practicum lined up in Seattle that was basically 100%, almost 100% through. I was just trying to figure out visa. And then 3 weeks before I was like leaving the country, everything kind of got canceled. So it was very difficult to be trying to find a practicum so last minute. I know the pandemic is still happening, but you guys are in better place than we were in 2020 because so many organizations have created the platform and the means to do remote internships. At the time, the organization I was supposed to go with just put their hands up and they're like, nope, it's against our policies. All our internships have to be in person. 6 months later, they were offering online internships after I had graduated. So, like these organizations now for the last 2 years, they've put that into place. And even though so when I was struggling to find an internship, I really did reach out to contacts that I had made over the year, people that I had met at conferences, professors that I knew who had, not side jobs, so to say, but they had other organizations that they worked with outside of just the university. And that's how I found my placement with the Humanitarian Health Ethics group, or research group. One of our professors was doing a project there with refugee health, and specifically on palliative care, which I did get to learn a little bit about in one of my refugee health classes. So I had the background understanding, I had a bit of interest in it already, and I made the connection really quickly and was able to find something, and she was able to tailor a project for me because it was so last minute. However, for you guys, when you're in a place where, remote internships are a thing now, I did something very similar to LaShawn's, and I think this is a tactic that can be used for applying for remote internships just as well as in-person ones as well. And I wasn't looking too much on the who as detailed as LaShawn was, because again, I was looking in different places. But what I did find is that when you go and read research articles, so I was really interested in maternal health. So anytime I found some topic that was really detailed about maternal health and was something I was interested in, every single research paper will have a point of contact on who you can reach out to talk about that paper. And it will either be a PI or it will be someone who is heavily involved in the actual research project. And you can email them and say like, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm doing this, or I'm looking for a practicum, I'm the student at this, program. And they will 100% email you back as long as you, again, have read the paper and you include a bit of a blurb about what you found cool about it. So, do your research and try and find these little ins. Go onto research articles, go onto specific organization websites. Some of these organizations don't put their listings on LinkedIn or on Indeed. They'll just put it directly onto their website and hope for the best. And they get the applications they need. But, what I did is I did something similar to what Bindra did is I did not know this RSS feed hack, so that's really good that you guys get to know that. But I just bookmarked all the organizations. I had about 10 organizations that I found really interesting. I was hoping to go to Seattle for my practicum because it has a really great global health, hub there. There's so many organizations there. So I had a list of 10 organizations I checked on the daily, and I looked on their website, and I just was always looking for what postings they had. And most of them, I think 90% of them never posted on their LinkedIn websites about a posting. It was only ever on their website. So don't rely too heavily on job posting websites. Make sure you're trying to narrow down to specific organizations. And I can guarantee most of them have online practicum and internships in place now, whereas they didn't in 2020. So that shouldn't be... So these tips that, LaShawn, Bindra, Gordon, and I are giving you, they can be applied for both online practicums and for in-person practicums because the application process is still very similar for both of them.
So just to hop in here, I know Simi in the chat is asking how to find the perfect internship, as I am really struggling to find one in Brisbane, Australia. So do you all have any sort of specific advice to Simi?
I will say that, being in the space right now with the pandemic, one of the upsides is that you're not restricted by geography. So don't look just in Brisbane, Australia. If you're okay with working remotely, which I know we've been doing for 2 years, but honestly, you learn a lot of skills, especially if you're in public health and global health. Doing an online practicum is going to help you. It's a very good skill to have. Oh, you have been looking everywhere. Okay. So maybe narrowing down a little bit. So if you're looking too much everywhere, then you maybe, just casting your net way too far and wide. Try and narrow down to organizations that are specific in skill sets that you want or the areas that you're interested in. And also try and look for organizations that are big and small. Don't try and aim too high. It's always good. But the smaller organizations will also give you just as good learning opportunities. Oftentimes, because they have smaller teams, you'll be able to learn a lot more because they'll be able to put more responsibilities onto you because they don't have as many people. So there's always the pros and cons to working in smaller organizations. I personally think it's a great idea. So try and look diversely and how big the organizations are. Don't try and look for something that's only internationally known. There might be local stuff that you can look into too.
Yeah, and what I would also add to that, and just applicable to everyone in here, use those warm contacts. So you are already connected to a huge network of people, whether it's your colleagues, your professors, your teachers, your parents, your family members. They probably have connections and they could kind of facilitate that conversation. So definitely take advantage of that. And I know it might seem redundant or not necessary, but a lot of the positions I've received was through networking. So just you using that your immediate network. There's so much value in that network that you've been curating, cultivating over the last few years. So don't underestimate that.
And I know it's nerve-wracking. I've been there. I am such a nervous person in terms of cold emailing, cold contacting. It still kind of scares me, but treat it as a learning process. And this is a skill you're just going to have to know. You can't go, you just have to know how to network and cold email people. So treat it as a learning process. There's going to be some trial and error, but don't think of it as this huge task. Treat it like a class and try your best.
Yeah, definitely. And we also have some specific questions from international students who are in a similar predicament. I would just say if you want sort of specific advice based on your situation, we have a 30-minute office hour appointments on Mondays. LaShawn's going to drop the link in there now. So if you want to chat more specifically around some specific advice we can provide you around your situation, maybe that's the better place to do it. But those questions are definitely insightful, and I think there's a lot of people in different boats when it comes to Practicum. But the online or remote opportunities that exist now kind of expands the world a little bit. So I'm not sure how soon Practicum decisions are coming for some people, but office hours is out there if you want to utilize it. All right. So another question that we received as well, that's kind of more relating to actually applying for a Practicum. So maybe you found ones that you like and you're taking the step to start applying for Practicum placements. So one general question we had, and I'll toss this to Bindra first, is how can I put an excellent application for Practicum placements and stand out amongst other very talented applicants? How do we do that?
For sure. So I think one of the main things you need to do when you're applying is really look at the posting if you're applying from a job posting, look at what exact skills they're requiring and really reflect on how the skills and experiences that you've built throughout your master's really showcases or exemplifies the responsibilities that they're looking for in a candidate. And so really tailor your application to, okay, you're looking for XYZ, like program evaluation, research skills. What skills did I learn during my master's that shows that I have these skills and that I can contribute to this organization? And really put that on your application and talk about how that position or that organization or that experience itself will help you in your career path. Really focus it on how you're going to get the most out of that experience and how it's going to be beneficial for you. Because I know at the end of the day, the Practicum employers who are hiring you, they also want to help you. They want to help you build your career journey. And so if you can tell them that this is how this Practicum will help me within your application, that will be really helpful to help you stand out as a candidate as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. And just from my experience as a hiring person on the back end, I've been able to supervise a lot of Practicum students in my current position as community manager. And, when I read through these applications, you got to make sure that you tailor it to the position, like Bindra said. It's so easy to spot when you're sending your generic CV and cover letter. Like it's nothing is fine tuned to the position. Like at least make that effort to include keywords, key skills, key phrases from the job description that was put out and incorporate that and tailor it in a meaningful way that also gets off to what Bindra says about showing why this would benefit you and how you could benefit the organization and why you're passionate about it. Because, it's just so easy to see when you're just kind of sending mass CVs and cover letters. I know it's time consuming. I know you're strapped for time, but like it's so easy to tell. And if you really, really want that practicum placement, you really, really want to stand out, it's worth to go the extra mile.
Indeed, and it just kind of shows, when you don't take that effort, maybe you miscommunicate that you don't understand what's expected from you in the position. So you just have to make sure a large portion of an application can be templated, but there are times where points in the resume or cover letter where you need to be a little bit more specific. One example I'll give you from even mine is I went to Western MPH and there's an internal placement process, and we had a fun exercise where we kind of mapped out where everyone was going to pick as their first choice on a board. And like, for example, there were some infectious disease jobs, and in the field of infectious diseases, they tend to prefer people with clinical experiences such as nurses, doctors, you name it. So I automatically, based on the competition that was there, I just pulled myself out of the hat for that position and looked somewhere else. If I had to do it again and I really wanted that position, I would have to sell what I bring as something distinct and different from them that would add value in a different way. So if I had to go back and do it again, I probably would have still applied, but I wouldn't have tried to compete. Well, I have clinical experience or whatever. Maybe I have expertise in digital marketing or project management or something that I can bring to the table. So focus on what is required of a job position and focus on the uniqueness of you and how that can be transferred to the position you're applying to.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip, Gordon, because I think we get caught up in, these type of people are going to apply, or they're looking for, people that have these type of skills. I need to showcase that I have them too. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you do at a certain level, but again, you've got skills that are unique to your experiences and your knowledge and your life experiences. So try and hone those in and explain that in your CV and really tailor it to the job. And one thing I will say, the job applications that I always got the best results from, or like internship applications I got the best results from, were the ones that I really put my passion into the CV or into the cover letter. Like, you can yourself tell when you're writing a cover letter, when you're really, really feeling and wanting this job versus when you're applying for the sake of applying. If you can tell it, the other person can 100% tell when it's that case. So try and really put your passion into the application that you are writing, and it will, they will see it. And sometimes, I've had it happen for me where if they weren't able to accept me for that job, they were able to refer me to someone else who has a similar position that has a slightly different topic. And that is mainly because they see that passion in you and they know that you want this really badly. And they can, they don't want that fire to go out, and they will refer you elsewhere.
Yeah. And one more kind of technical tip just to add. When it comes to these cover letters, there's a bunch of ways to do it. There's no one given way to do it, but it becomes painfully obvious how much time you spent on a given cover letter, right? So, I've received cover letters that are just like a couple sentences long, and then you have like an essay. So like obviously more work was put into one, and I'm not saying that quality or quantity is better, means better. I'm just saying that I think you could find a good place on that cover letter, like a good solid piece of work that gets across all the points you want to get through while showing your unique self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any questions from the chat, LaShawn?
So we have a question here. So for those who have successfully cold contacted practicum opportunities, I was wondering how you can respectfully decline placements once you have made your choice. I'm concerned about leading on potential supervisors when I'm wanting to see what opportunities exist. Any thoughts about that? I could kick us off here. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Benja. Go ahead, Benja.
I can comment on that. So I was in a very similar situation where when I was applying to practicums, I had set up a bunch of informational interviews with like organizations that I was interested in. And so when I had these options to choose from them, I had to obviously decline the ones I didn't want. And in order to do that respectfully in a way, I made sure to really tell them, let them know how interested I was to still work in the organization, and why that opportunity appealed to me in the first place, and that I still want to maintain that connection afterwards. But I gave them the reasons for why I was choosing a different opportunity and why that specifically would help my career path. And I think if you tailor it to, this is XYZ are the reasons why it's going to help me tailor my career path, but I'm still interested in, staying connected with you down the road at a later time. They really are going to not look down on that at all, and they'll really respect your decisions. As long as you're able to, maintain that connection with them, I think that's completely okay. So I think it's really important about like being really transparent and clear with them and not really leading them on and letting them know that you're still, you have a bunch of options that you're deciding between and they're not the only ones that you're interested in.
Yeah, I feel like there's a weird asymmetry in like getting back to people. Like from the employee's end, they don't necessarily get back to you and say you don't get accepted or whatever, you're accepted in, you often don't know and you get ghosted. But I think what Bindra and I are suggesting is you shouldn't ghost people, especially if they gave you an offer and you've been in contact. Be as open and as transparent as possible and let them know how you're thinking. Obviously, there's a time and place to make a decision. So once you know and you decide on what path you're going to go through, make sure you follow up with those other contacts and let them know. As just be polite and honest, and they'll understand. And give them a compliment of how important their work is.
Yeah,
they like that. I know they like that.
And a quick note on that too. I think it's even more critically important is if you had gone to someone who then went out of their way to then find a place for you in an organization or a practicum, and then you don't respectfully respect the effort that they went through to get you a practicum. That deserves an even more tailored letter of appreciation as to why you're not going to take that position and how appreciative you were of that. I know LaShawn and I have been in a similar position where, we've, I'll just leave it there. But just make sure if you go out of your way to get an opportunity from someone that may not have existed before, it's very important that if you don't choose that you're very transparent about it with the person and do not ghost under any circumstance, like LaShawn said. It's not a good look.
Cool. And we got another question here. If we are applying to a practicum that we don't meet all the requirements, what do you recommend in terms of how to present our interest to the position?
Play up your strengths 100%. You're not going to meet, at least most of the jobs and practicums I've applied to, I've never met all the requirements, and I don't think they expect you to. That's a lot of things to check box. But play up the strengths that you have and really highlight, as Gordon said earlier, what makes you a unique applicant. If they're asking for, some type of promotional or communication skills, you don't necessarily have formal training in it, but say you had a blog that you did for a couple of years and it did really successfully. That may not be the same thing, but you can showcase that you have some type of communication skills. You've done some type of knowledge translation. Even if it's not in the field of health, you have that skill and you can use that. I don't think any experience is too small to talk about. Similarly, if it was a project that you did in school, they know you're a student. You can talk about your experiences from school. There were times where I was applying to maternal health organizations. I talked about the policy brief assignments that I wrote or the essays that I wrote because those showcase that I have a certain knowledge in that area and that I have writing skill sets and I did well in that assignment. So they know you're a student. They don't expect you to be some professional who has 5 years of experience, and it's okay if you don't check mark everything, but really, really showcase the things that you do check mark, plus bonuses that they don't have in their listing that make you different from everyone else.
Yeah. And in order to, this is kind of a little bit contrary to what Purva mentioned, but yes, I completely agree with what Purva mentioned. So there are situations where a requirement is a requirement. So if there's a specific position that requires a nurse and it literally says nursing degree required, whether it's for a job or a practicum placement, it pretty much means a nursing
Yeah.
job is required, either from a legal perspective, like there's unions and stuff involved in some cases, and organizational policies, or whether it's just a strong preference. So you have to decide how much effort you want to put in those more unlikely situations. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just unlikely if you want to sort of prioritize your time. But in terms of the experience side of things and the skills, like what Purva was referencing, you just have to think through what you've done in your previous work, your education, and see how you can relate it to a specific position.
I see a lot of specific questions here, so I just dropped our LinkedIn's in the chat just to connect with us there, so we could help you in more detail over LinkedIn, just because we won't have time to go through all these specific questions, but we will be there to answer you once you connect with us.
Perfect. Thank you, LaShawn. So one, probably the most important question, and we will be having an event in the coming months around how to leverage your practicum into a job opportunity at the same organization.
You don't want to miss that.
Yeah.
That's going to be hype.
Right?
That's going to be
same
hype.
organization or to a different company. So we will have that in I think around May when people are starting their practicums. So you don't want to miss that. And this question kind of ties into that. So consider it a little bit of a teaser. So, and I'll ask all of us here this question because I think we can have some valuable insights. So what were some of the skills acquired in your master's? So through the educational experience of being in the classroom or the practicum itself that you use to transition into your career that you're in now. So LaShawn, you look super excited to answer, so I'll start with you.
Okay, so I would have to say the soft skills. So being able to interact with people, different backgrounds, different opinions, different ideas, and have that kind of respect and humility when having these interactions, because you're going to talk to different people in public health and global health, and they're going to come from different places. And you have to be able, despite that difference, to work together and solve a common problem. So it can be frustrating, it can be confusing, and you can be like, hey, I don't want to do this crap anymore. But remember why you're doing it. You're in public health and global health for a reason. It's not meant to be easy. There's a lot of hard work that has to be done and is being done by a lot of public health and global health professionals. And if it was easy, everyone would do it. But this is one of the challenges we have as public health and global health professionals. So those soft skills, conflict resolutions, being able to talk to people, understanding how to communicate with others, leadership skills, teamwork skills, those are all things I use every day. And it gets even more complicated during the era of COVID-19 and working globally, right? I'm communicating with stakeholders from different parts of the world, India, China, Iran, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, everywhere. So keep in mind different time zones, keep in mind different cultural nuances. So I would have to say those soft skills are super important. And I think, and I know that within these master's programs that you are doing, you will have the basic science, the basic public health, global health foundations and fundamental to tackle any public health issues that are to emerge in the future. You have the critical thinking skills already to learn about the next pandemic that we don't know about, right? You will learn that. You have the skills. You've learned a lot. So those soft skills are super important. For sure. Without a doubt.
Bindra, what do you got for us?
I completely agree with LaShawn. I think in addition to just those technical skills that you all are probably learning in class, the soft skills are the most important thing when it comes to actually applying those technical skills on the job itself. But I think I'm going to speak more to not just the skills that I learned, but more so the mindset I had in terms of being a practicum student. I think it's really important to be open-minded and be willing to go out of your comfort zone when you're doing your practicum. I think for me personally, I was given a lot of projects or a lot of different tasks that I had no experience with, I wasn't familiar with, I didn't even know if I would like. And so I was really open to these new opportunities and to learning new skills or different experiences that I didn't even know I would learn or be able to do. And I think really having that open mindset is so important as a practicum student because you don't know what you don't know or you don't like, and you're able to learn that and really build those experiences throughout your practicum experience. I think having that mindset is, for me, I think it's the most important thing in addition to just those soft skills that LaShawn mentioned.
Absolutely. Purva,
Yeah, no, 100% to both the points, for sure. One thing that I can definitely say, especially in the time of COVID, online, remote, and like virtual types of workspaces are here to stay, whether, like organizations will remain remote or if they go hybrid. So really try and engage in the online platform. I know you guys have been doing it in school, but like an online platform for work is quite different. You speak differently. You're going to be sending out a lot of formal emails. Those type of technical skills are really good to, make sure you're fostering, and they might seem small, but, like they're things that will always put you a little, like, someone might look at you a little differently if you have a really well way of presenting to yourself virtually, or if you send really nicely tailored emails that showcase, everything you want to say, but in a concise manner. And these are things you will pick up as you're doing your practicum. It won't be things that you may necessarily be doing in school, because the way you email, the way you talk is so much more informal when you're in school versus when you're in a practicum or in a workplace. So that's a skill that I definitely think you can carry forward. But just to kind of also emphasize LaShawn's point about the soft skills, especially if you're working in a global setting, that cultural understanding of everyone that you're working with is so important. I don't necessarily work with people all over the world that like LaShawn does, but I speak to people from a whole bunch of different cultural backgrounds. They all live in the GTA, but I work with people who are Pakistani, Indian, they are maybe Aboriginal, like I work with so many different people who have different cultural backgrounds. So even if you don't work in a global organization, that skill set's going to be important to you, because not everyone's going to have the same experiences as you or is going to be speaking the same language as you. So that skill set is 100% something you're going to be taking forward no matter where you're going to be going or working after your practicum.
Thanks for that. And I'll be really quick. I sort of had two main takeaways. And the first one was sort of confidence to practice in public health, but at the same time not feeling like you identified a lot of gaps where you could enhance the practice of public health. So confidence, what I mean by that is we did a lot of presentations in our practicum. I was not a good presenter. I was a pretty shy public speaker, not something I was very interested in or good at. That's something that over time it became like a second nature. So that's one core skill that I learned from my MPH. In terms of what we don't know, I think the biggest thing I learned from my MPH is how much we actually don't know and how much we actually don't do. So LaShawn and I, in Bindra and Purva in various capacities, you finish school, that's not the end of your learning. You have to continue trying to figure out what are those gaps, where your strengths are, what are your weaknesses as an individual, what are the weaknesses of an organization, and what are the weaknesses of the field, and basically taking actions to bridge those gaps. So that's kind of the main things I learned from that practicum and my Masters of Public Health experience. So if you enjoy content like this, be sure to subscribe to our podcast. I know LaShawn put the links in there before. We talk about a lot of things like core competencies and certifications you can take to enhance your public health practice. So be sure to follow us and so you don't miss any episodes. And for the moment you've been waiting for, LaShawn is going to talk about our giveaway for those who are still in the audience.
Alrighty. Thank you so much for bearing with us, and I'm so glad to still see a lot of you here. So without further ado, we're planning to give away a tailored career coaching review session for one lucky winner. So this will basically be very much tailored to to your preferences, facilitate different connections that you're interested in, and we'll work with you to figure out and make you satisfied with whatever service you are interested in. So we'll work with you with this really tailored service here. So now, to be entered to win this service, what you have to do is, number 1, follow us on Twitter. Number 2, follow us on Instagram. And number 3, email us at thepublichealthinsight@gmail.com. You could choose to do either any of those 3, as long as you do one of them. Obviously, if you do more, your chances are better. And I'm going to drop the links to all that in the description. So follow us on Twitter, Instagram. And if you already have followed us on both those platforms, send us a nice email talking about what you learned from this event today. And the deadline for this is midnight EST Toronto time. So make sure right after this event ends, you go follow a couple of our social pages or send us an email and you'll be entered to win. And we will announce our winner on social media tomorrow and you will be contacted. So with that, I'll pass it back to Gordon.
Thanks, Lashawn. So make sure you don't miss out on an opportunity. This brings us to the end of the live Q&A. My name is Gordon. We have Lashawn, Bindra, Purva, signing out.
Peace.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.